this little tiny black book called Life's Little Instruction Book. Have you ever seen this? It's like filled with a couple hundred, like, hey, here's some important things that you should know or do in life. And before phones, these were typically placed at the toilet, and this is like what you would read as you were going to the bathroom. And so I think this book is full of some really great inspirational quotes. Things like, watch a sunrise at least once a year, or have a firm handshake, look people in the eye, that kind of thing. But what's funny about this book is that some of these sayings, when read back to back together, do not make for the best advice, all right? Let me give you an illustration. For example, number 65 in this book is, let people pull in front of you when you're stopped in traffic. Number 66 says, don't make the same mistake twice, right? Number 74, eat prunes. 75, ride a bike, okay? That is not a good combination. I would not recommend that. Number 119, put a lot of little marshmallows in your hot chocolate. Number 120, learn CPR, all right? Yes, you should know CPR if you're gonna do that. And then 226, this one was just funny to me. It stood out to me. It said this, when someone hugs you, let them be the first to let go. But then I thought, what if we both own this book? This could get a little awkward, you know what I'm saying? I mean, no one's letting go. We're just not doing it. But there are a couple pieces of wisdom in this book that definitely ring true. For instance, look people in the eye and say thank you a lot. And I want to take a minute to say thank you to everybody that not only calls Riverway their home church, but serves on a regular basis to make our church what it is today. Nearly 13 years ago, we started this church, but the idea of church has been around for thousands of years. And the question that I'm compelled to ask over and over again is this: how did a first century movement birthed in the lowliest part of the Roman Empire, whose leader was rejected by their own people, crucified, killed, how did that survive and thrive in the face of a violent, organized, state-funded resistance? How did it happen? And we talked a little bit about this last week on Easter. But when I was 19 or 20, I actually got to go to Rome on a choir trip, and it was amazing. We got to go all over and just see the incredible history that is there from the first century. And one of the most impressive sights, you've heard of it, is the Colosseum. And here's a picture of the Colosseum. It's just this impressive deal, but what is equally as impressive is that while this place back in the first century would be the very place that would kill followers of Jesus for sport, kill them for sport, there is now, if you look at this next picture, there is now a cross hanging over the emperor's entrance to the Colosseum. And you think, how did this happen? Right? When 350 years later, Rome would declare Christianity the religion, the official religion of the empire, how does this happen? And it's a mystery that historians have pondered for centuries, and they pretty much all arrive at the same conclusion. Karen Armstrong is a historian and author who wrote that in a book about violence and comparative religion, she said this. She said, against all odds, by the 3rd century, Christianity had become a force to be reckoned with. We still do not really understand how this came about. And we don't know how it came about unless you pay attention to the first century eyewitnesses who documented the resurrection of Jesus that changed everything. And if you haven't heard about that, listen to last week's message as I really went deep into some of the eyewitness accounts of who Jesus was and is today and how it changed their life. But today I want to challenge you with one thing that actually threatens the impact of this message. One thing that threatens it inside every family, for every parent that is raising kids, for every church that is trying to pass a baton to the next generation, right? What threatens this life-changing message? And it's highlighted by the children of Israel who did something so stupid. I'm telling you what. Have you ever done something so stupid and you look back and you thought, that was so stupid. Why did I do that, right? I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and me and my older brother, he's just a couple years older than me. We actually lived in downtown Minneapolis for a couple years. And during that time on Saturdays, sometimes we just wander about, and kind of doing our thing. And there's a bridge near our house with railroad tracks. And we actually climbed down this big wall to get underneath these railroad tracks. And we found some homeless people living underneath there. And so we just decided to become friends with them, right? Because that's what the book says, right? Firm handshake, good eye contact, right? And that's what we did. Only soon to find out that these guys were kind of wasted, and we thought, well, they're hungry. And so every week for a few weeks, we would actually make them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and we'd bring it down to them underneath, not even ever really realizing the danger of an 11 or 12-year-old underneath railroad tracks with homeless people that are drunk. I just thought, we didn't know. And I'll never forget one time we were sitting there and they had like a bonfire going made up of some crates that they had just kind of thrown together, and they're all sitting around this fire, and we brought them some sandwiches, and one of the guys got up to go get a sandwich from us, and he had a crutch on one arm, and he was kind of coming like this, and you could tell he had a little bit too much to drink. And as he was coming to get the sandwich, he actually fell over into the bonfire. And me and my brother's eyes got about this big. We were like, what do we do? And I'm waiting for his friends to jump up and help him out of the fire. And they just kept saying, Roy, get out of the fire, man. Roll out of the fire. And so he just kind of rolls eventually out of the fire, and he just kept rolling until the fire was out. And then he got up and got his sandwich. And that was the last day that we went and visited them. We just thought, man, this was not safe. This was so stupid. Why did we do that? And sometimes we make stupid decisions. It's one thing to make a stupid decision. It's another thing to keep making the same stupid decisions over and over and over again. And this is actually what the children of Israel did. They kept making the same stupid decision that hurt them again and again and again. And so first, let me give you a little backstory on this group. This was the group of people, millions of them, who were in slavery in Egypt until God raised up Moses to set his people free. So if you remember back to Sunday school class, maybe when you were a kid, right? It was the burning bush when Moses would call. It was also Pharaoh saying, no way, Jose, you're not having the people. The terrible plagues that came and finally broke Pharaoh down, and he let people go out of hundreds of years of slavery. Parting the Red Sea, God parts the Red Sea, the people cross over, and now they are free. And millions of people are rejoicing. They can't believe it. God, thank you. You've set us free. This is amazing. And God says, here's the deal. I'm about to lead you into a promised land. And they're like, well, what's a promised land? Well, I'm telling you, this is the greatest land you've ever seen. A land flowing with milk and honey. I mean, like, this is the amazing place you want to live, and I'm going to lead you there, but you have to follow me. And you have to follow the commands I give you. And all the people were like, bet, let's do it. Love this plan. Let's go. And so here's what God wanted them to follow. Deuteronomy 6, 1 through 12. Here's what he says. These are the commands, decrees, and laws the Lord your God directed me to teach you to observe in the land that you're crossing the Jordan to possess, so that you, your children, and their children after them, don't miss that, so that your children and their children after them may fear the Lord your God as long as you live by keeping all his decrees and commands that I give you, and so that you may enjoy a long life. And if you ask anybody, do you want to enjoy a long life? Everyone would say, oh yes, I want to enjoy a long life. That'd be great. So hear, Israel, and be careful to obey so that it may go well with you and that you may increase greatly in the land flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And here's the commands. Here it is. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you're walking along the road, when you're driving to Chick-fil-A, when you're going to the sports field, when you lie down, when you get up, over breakfast, over dinner. Impress these things on your children. Tie them as symbols around your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. When the Lord your God brings you into the land he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and Jacob to give you, A land with large, flourishing cities you did not build, houses filled with all kinds of goods that you did not provide, wells you did not dig, and vineyards and olive groves you did not plant. Then when you eat and are satisfied, be careful that you do not forget the Lord. Be careful that you don't forget the Lord, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. So I know that was a lot of scripture to read, but it's really important for us to understand the command. And basically, if I could boil it down, this is what he's saying, and this is the first fill in your notes. Here was God's plan. Love me with all your heart and pass this down to the next generation. Love me with all of your heart and pass this down to the next generation. And so all the Israelites, right, they just can't wait to get the land flowing with milk and honey. They can't wait. The olive groves, the vineyards, they just can't wait. They can't believe that God has brought them out of slavery and is about to bring them to that. But here's the problem. It took all of about 15 minutes until the Israelites were complaining and moaning and breaking God's commands. And God isn't happy. They have quickly forgotten all that he has done for them and forgotten what he's trying to lead them into. And so God is not happy. So he makes them wander in the wilderness for 40 years, kind of like a giant timeout, right? You better shape up your attitude, get it right? 40 years. You know, for any teens who's ever been in a timeout, any kids been in a timeout? You thought 5 minutes was bad. Could you imagine 40 years, right? You are going to be there until you are 48 years old, right? You're just going to sit there. Finally, after this time out, they're getting ready to enter the promised land. Moses dies. Joshua is now leading the Israelites, led them into the promised land, and now Joshua is ready to die. And here is his command to all the people, who for sure by now have learned their lesson, right? Here's his command. Joshua 24:14-15. He says, now therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in two ways. Serve him in sincerity and in, what's that word? Faithfulness, right? Sincerity and faithfulness. Put away the gods that your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt and serve the Lord. And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your fathers served in the region beyond the river or the gods of the Amorites in the land in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. We used to have that little plaque in my house growing up. Maybe you had that. Maybe you saw that. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Notice Joshua's commitment, his own commitment to the Lord. He is a man who has made up his mind that he is going to love the Lord his God with all his heart, all of his mind, all of his soul. Nothing's going to stop him. And he's going to lead his household to do the same. And this is what we call a first chair follower of Jesus. 3 different chairs that I want to lead you into today. The 3 chairs of really what ends up becoming tragedy. You see, in Joshua's generation, they were serving the Lord wholeheartedly, following after him, saying, God, you are our God and we're going to follow you. You see your next fill in. Joshua had made following God a priority in his life, and he leads his household to do the same. Joshua has made following God a priority in his life, and he leads his household to do the same. And this is what God wanted for all of them. And God would say over and over again, if you will do this, you will be blessed. You're going to go into newness of life and freedom and fullness of life. I'm telling you, that will follow if you keep me in the first place in your life, in the first chair. And people initially responded to Joshua saying, Joshua, we're with you. But then something tragic happens. Judges 2:6-7, it says this. When Joshua dismissed the people of Israel went each into his inheritance to take possession of the land. And all the people served the Lord all the days of Joshua and all the days of the elders who outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great work the Lord had done for Israel. And then something happens. Joshua dies, the elders die, and suddenly we are filled with a generation who is suddenly filled with compromise and laziness. This is the second chair. Suddenly you have a generation. They're not serving Jesus as wholeheartedly. They're not following the commands as they should. I mean, they're doing it part way and they're doing some things. It was kind of like 1 foot in and 1 foot out. They had seen the great work the Lord had done for Israel. And so there was some commitment there, but it wasn't the same level of commitment as Joshua. It wasn't the same level of commitment as Moses' generation. It was with this next generation that compromise and laziness entered into their relationship with God. And it was a trickle-down effect. But here's what's so fascinating to me. Don't miss this. The people in this generation of compromise and laziness thought everything was going just fine. In fact, the shift was so subtle that they didn't even see it. They thought they were just doing, right, with the previous generation. I mean, not as much. I mean, come on. They're really religious. I mean, they were really love God. I mean, I love God, but I mean, my parents, boy, they were a little out there. I don't know. Right? I mean, maybe you've heard that before. I mean, this generation, it happened so subtly, they didn't even realize their compromise and their laziness and their relationship with God. And here's what's true of us today, your next fill-in. That if your focus is not on Jesus and serving him, your life will always drift away. Your life will always drift away. Because following Jesus wholeheartedly takes a drive and a discipline and a commitment to say, God, I'm following you all the days of my life like Joshua. As for me and my house, I've already made up my mind. We're serving the Lord. Like we're in this thing until the day we die. We're not going to lose sight of that. And yet what this second generation did was they gave God a nod in their hearts. But we're not living wholeheartedly for him as Joshua pleaded with them to do. These are second chair people, not knowing that their choices would lead the generation that is following them. It would lead them fully away from God. The very next verse, verse 8. Joshua, son of Nun, the servant of the Lord, died at the age of 110. How many of you want to live to 110? I don't know if I do. After that whole generation had been gathered to their ancestors, in other words, they've all died, another generation grew up who knew neither the Lord nor what he had done for Israel. And because they didn't know the Lord, and because they didn't know about all the great things that God had done, then the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord and served the Baals. They forsook the Lord, the God of their ancestors who had brought them out of Egypt. And this is heartbreaking. That because there was a generation that was distracted and not dedicated to God, the following generation did not know him and were not following him anymore. This is the third chair. This love for God, the passion that Joshua had, it wasn't modeled for them. They weren't told of the things that God had done in their lives. They forgot to tell the stories of Pharaoh and how he wouldn't let your grandpas and grandpas, your great-grandfather, they didn't hear the stories that said, do you realize that for hundreds of years, our family line was in slavery? And the God of Israel came And you wouldn't believe how he set us free. You got to hear about these plagues, and he finally broke him down to finally Pharaoh. Oh, if you could have seen the Red Sea split. I mean, my great-grandfather told me about this, and I'm just telling you, you'd never believe, you'd never see anything like it in your life. The Red Sea just split, and we walked through on dry land, and they followed us behind, and the water came crashing down and killed them all. It was never passed down. And I think to myself, can you even imagine what the previous generations would have thought? What they went through to get us to this point. To tell this last generation, you were born in the promised land. But you were born here because of people like Joshua who followed God with all of their heart, only to have it all slip away. And now their grandkids are far from God, far from his love, far from his purposes, and it's heartbreaking. And so for this first generation to follow Jesus wholeheartedly means that your focus is on Jesus. Your focus is where it needs to be, him, his salvation, his love. You're growing in him. You're putting yourself in the right environments to continue to grow. A generation of compromise and laziness, this generation's focus is distracted. It's just distracted. You know, God's great. But so is work, and, God is great, but so is sports, and God is great, and so is, I got to do this and that, and, God's great, and it's fine, but, he's just like a part of my life. Versus the previous generation who said, he's my whole life. He's first, and everything else comes after him. And when you have a generation that is distracted, the next generation, the result always is focus is on me. My focus isn't on Jesus. In fact, I'm not even distracted with it. The focus is totally on me. And this actually happens in families all the time. You have one generation of a family that has been focused on Jesus and following him wholeheartedly, and it takes another generation or two of distraction living. We go to church a couple times a year. We go on Christmas. Come on. We go on Easter. Right? We check our boxes from time to time. We show up to Block of Blessing. We get back to the community. But their hearts are not wholeheartedly following Jesus. And all it takes is a generation or two that's distracted before there's a generation who doesn't even know the God that you think you know. It's amazing to me. It's no longer a priority. And this generation here never assumes that danger's on the other side for the generation to follow. And I'll tell you, I'm passionate about this because I've seen it happen over and over and over and over and over and over and over again with families. In fact, I see it happening to families right now. Families who are distracted and they don't know that the next generation's about to not be following God. That's heartbreaking for me. This is what happens when neglect happens. A couple pictures to illustrate this. These places that were once thriving. And all it was neglect. You can just roll through these. All it is neglect. Places that were once thriving, now dilapidated. And you think, how does that happen? And I want you to just put on your spiritual thinking caps for a moment. That is a representation of what happens in people's spiritual lives when their faith is neglected. And they don't even realize they're drifting. And sometimes it's not an overt turning away, but it's simply neglecting to do what you know you need to do, what's in front of you. And so when we see 2 generations after Joshua and no one knows the Lord, whose fault is that? 2 generations after Joshua, no one knew Jesus. No one knew, right? And maybe in your generations, maybe that's been true. You've seen that played out in people's lives. It just takes a couple generations, they don't know Jesus. Whose fault is that? Who's responsible for that? The answer is me. The answer is you. It's all of us. Because you're next fill-in, we have a responsibility to pass our faith on to the next generation. We have a responsibility. And if you thought that this message today is just for people with kids, no. This is for all of us in this room, that all of us have a responsibility to pass this to the next generation. I'll never forget my Sunday school teacher. When I was in grade school, her name was Jennifer Nepper. Jennifer showed up every Sunday morning to teach me Sunday school. And we had like the cheesy flannel graph, and Jesus would be stuck to the board and the donkeys and and the Bible characters. And half the time I'm sure we were screwing up and eating too many animal crackers, ODing on those, and we just loved it. But I'll never forget her because she helped shape who I am. I'll never forget my youth leader, Stephen Kim Wida, who put up with all my teenagerness and loved me and cared for me and poured into my life and showed me what it meant to love Jesus and what it meant to love others. They modeled it for me. And to this day, they're still some of my very best friends and greatest mentors in my life. And here's what I know, that I wouldn't be where I am at in my faith. I would not be here today if it weren't for people along the way that invested in my life and passed the faith down to me. I wouldn't be here. And in the same way, God wants to use you. God wants to use you to pass the faith down to the next generation. You don't have to be called. You don't have to be qualified. You don't have to have a burning bush moment. You just have to say, God, you can use my life. I'm available. You can use me. And today I'm going to ask you to do the same for the generation that's coming behind us. We have kids every single Sunday morning that need a Jennifer Nepper in their life, that will show up and take the lesson plan and just be faithful to tell these kids about Jesus and how much he loves them. We have teens every Tuesday night and every Wednesday night that need to hear and experience someone who loves Jesus and can love them. And so here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Your next fill-in. I'm going to ask you to do for the next generation what someone did or you wish had done for you. Because for some of you, you didn't start following Jesus until you were in your 30s or your 40s or your 50s, and you think to yourself, if only someone had modeled this for me. If only there had been someone in my life when I was 16 and 17, when I was 8, 9, someone that modeled Jesus for me. Think of the lifetime of regrets I could have avoided. If someone would have been willing to not live in a generation that is distracted, in a generation that is lazy and compromising, but a generation of people that lives wholeheartedly. If only someone could model this for me. You'd make a deposit in the next generation. Because when you do that, the value is compounded over a lifetime, and you can't even imagine the value that comes from that. You're helping to keep the next generation in the first chair. A generation who might be here, and you're going to help them get there. A generation that might be here, and you're going to help them get there. And so before we close today, I wanted you to hear directly from some of our current youth leaders and some of our current kid leaders that are making all the difference in the world and the lives of these kids and teens. So proud of them. Check this out.
I'm Randy. I've been serving with youth. I started last year with the 6th grade boys, so about a year and a half now.
I'm Annika Norgren, and I've been serving here at Riverway Youth.
My name's John Tingley. I serve 9th grade boys. Been with Riverway Youth now for 3 years.
Hi, my name is Chris Bryant. I am one of the youth leaders at Riverway. It has been a really awesome journey.
Hi, I'm Marcia Chiswick, and I've been serving here in the junior high. I just love the kids.
I'm Kristen. It's been great to just get to know the kids and see them every week and how they've been growing as people.
I love Riverway Youth because it's warming, it's inviting.
Favorite thing to do at youth group is beat Ryan Ross at mini hoop. My second favorite thing to do is beat Levi Kinney at mini hoop. I like to do both. I like to beat them both at mini hoop, yes.
I am a small group leader for the 6th grade girls. Super fun to be able to talk to and connect with God together.
As a small group leader, it's been really awesome to see the boys grow. In my personal faith journey, I've grown immensely because I've had the opportunity to serve. You're growing together with them.
I love seeing the people who are serving from the senior high and the junior high. It's great.
Hi, my name is Eric, and I've been serving at Riverway Youth for like 6 months now.
I'm Landon Eli. I help out with 7th grade boys.
My name's Austin. I'm the 7th and 8th grade. I'm the 7th and 8th grade boy leader.
The importance of small groups is to have, like, for us, a great group of guys that you can lean on one each other. It's helped me get through things that I wouldn't be able to get through alone. So
We've had a few really good moments where, somebody opens up about something they're struggling with or things that are going really well. Those barriers that they have up kind of break down, and we realize that we all kind of struggle with the same things.
I've seen a lot of them just open up and get vulnerable in small group, talk about the love of Jesus, and watching these kids get real with it. Sometimes it's really convicting because sometimes I can horse around in small group.
I've had some great leaders in my life. Shout out Brad and Gifford. So I think it's really important to invest in this next generation and help them become the people they want to be.
There's been a lot of people in my life that like at youth group who have impacted me in a big way. Like Micah, he's a good friend now, and it fills your life up.
Oftentimes, the right thing to do is not the easy thing to do. I've never raised teenagers. I don't know what that's like. I was just like, God, I just really don't see how I can help. And loud as day, I heard, Chris. Oftentimes, the right thing to do is not the easy thing to do. Fast forward almost 2 years, and each one of them own a piece of my heart.
For me, church was where I felt completely accepted. That kind of called me to pay that forward and try to make that the environment here at Riverway.
This is the next generation of youth group right here. And I know I love youth group so much, and I just get to be a part of them loving something as much as I do.
One kid may be struggling to connect with somebody, and you may be the person that changes it.
Man, when that happens, it's powerful.
Riverway is absolutely a positive place. I was a brand new face here just not long ago, and I was welcomed by so many people.
Riverway is the family, and everybody pitches in. I think volunteering is the best thing you can do.
If there's anything holding you back from doing this, I'd say don't let it. I couldn't imagine doing anything better than being with them on my Wednesday nights.
I've been coming to Riverway for about 4 years now, and I started serving with kids pretty much right away. So I've been with them for about 3.5 years.
I've been at Riverway for 8 years now and have been doing kids ministry for about 4 of those years.
Started working in kids church about end of 5th grade, beginning of 6th grade, and I'm 12th grade now, and it's been just a super enjoyable experience.
It's just been such a blessing to be able to get our kids plugged in to a place where they're learning about God and making new friends.
I knew I wanted to serve because that was important to me. When I had my son, I thought this is a perfect opportunity, 1, to volunteer, and 2, to get him really used and comfortable to coming to kids ministry and learning about Jesus every week. And so I started teaching in his class, and now I love it. I do it as much as I can, and he's in the bigger class, and now I get to continue to teach the smaller children.
I've been coming to Riverway for about 3 years now. My youth leader, Alyssa Ross, she was like, would you ever want to helping kids Sunday? And I've been doing it ever since. I love the kids here. It's so awesome.
They're so fun to be with. I love the relationships that we're building. It's fun to be able to see the kids in the hallway before and after church and get big smiles and high fives. My own relationship with God has gotten way stronger. It's just amazing how much I learn from their messages and what the kids teach me every single Sunday.
Every day in class we do worship, and then we do like a little lesson, a Bible story. They're just super into it. They're super attentive and like looking at you and ready to they want to learn.
I think for these kids, it's a good opportunity to just learn at their level. Not only activities, but it's also learning in a fun way. It's really interactive.
I have been working in Riverway Kids for about a year and a half. My husband and I, we have 3 kids, so we come a few minutes early, drop them all off, and then we're able to hang out in our classroom and connect with the kids and watch them develop and have a lot of fun with it.
As our family grew, we were looking for something that just had more of a community feel, and that's what we love about Riverway.
The feeling of belonging and then also being able to extend that out to our community is really why we're at Riverway. And so for us as kids, we have kids, we love working with kids.
Michelle and I have been attending Riverway Church 6 years now. I started coming here because of the younger children. So we had that connection right away, and that's really what we want as a family.
The kids, they just really love us teens. In small group, they always want to sit with you and or sit next to you. I think they feel super close with the teenagers.
In the beginning of the year, you get a new crew, and it's fun to see their progression throughout the year. Months later, they'll talk about a Bible verse that we worked on at the beginning of the year, and it's just amazing the way that this sticks in their heart.
And I always love when you have a new kid and then they come the next week and then the next week and then you realize oh my gosh, and now their parents are loving this too, and it just makes you so happy that people feel so welcome here.
This has got me closer to God because I know I'm changing the lives of these children on Sundays. I'm excited to come and see who I get to have in my class every day.
You come in and they brighten your day. They're a joy to work with, and it's just a really worthwhile investment to spend your time loving on those kids.
I love the check-in because I get to see all the little kids and their smiles, and then we've also just gotten to know a lot of different families through check-in. This is just a great way to connect with other members of the church.
This kids team is absolutely making a difference in these kids' lives. I was really worried about serving and oh my gosh, what do I do for flexibility if I have baseball for my older kid or I have something going on? And the staff here is amazing. They work with you. It's organized. I come in, I know what I'm doing. I jump in and sub when I can, and so I really feel like it's not a stressor, but something that's good to do, and it's flexible.
When we started coming to Riverway, one of the biggest things was that we heard that their kids' ministry was awesome, and that's the reason we really started going to church. But then I found that me and Jason have been so blessed by coming to church and being part of the community. And getting involved with kids is so special, and I highly encourage it for every single person. It's a really cool way to see our church growing.
Round of applause for all those that serve with our kids and teens. Amazing to see the impact, and here's what I'm going to ask you to do today. I'm going to ask you to say yes to the next generation. In fact, I'm going to plead with you. Because God help us on our watch. We can't see a generation fall 3 chairs to a place that they don't even know who he is. And here's what I know. I know that everybody is busy and that you do not have time. And that's why I'm going to ask you to make time. I'm going to ask you to make time for the next generation who we've been instructed to impress our faith upon. And so I'm going to ask you to serve on a Sunday morning, sit in a service, and serve in a service. And you may not know that's really why we started originally doing 2 services, so that people could serve in one and attend one. I'm going to ask you to give up bowling on Tuesday nights so that you can be a middle school small group leader. I'm going to ask you to give up relaxing on Wednesday nights so you can invest in a high schooler. Because this is what it means to impress your faith to the next generation. And here's your last fill-in, and then we're done. God always uses ordinary people who make themselves available. God always uses ordinary people who make themselves available. I want God to use you so that a year from now, you can be the one on that video saying, I can't believe how this has impacted my life and the way it's helped me impact other kids' lives. And my prayer is that you would want God to use you. And you may think you're not good enough, you're not qualified enough, or I can't identify with that generation. It's not about that. It is simply about making yourselves available. God, would you impress on our hearts the importance of the command you gave the Israelites so long ago to pass this faith on to their children and to their children and to their children. That as a faith community that follows after you, we have a responsibility to pass this faith to the next generation. And I pray that you would inspire in our hearts the reality that we can't leave it to others to do, because there's more work that needs to be done, and there's more students to reach, there's more kids to teach. And I pray, God, that you'd burden our hearts for this, and that as a result, we'd see many, many people in the next generation learn to follow you, and it would be like a ripple effect across generations because someone stepped up and made themselves available. So God, your blessing, your provision, and I pray, God, that you do it in Jesus' name.